Great. I think we are live now, and I hope that we do have an audience. Welcome everybody at this the domain webinar for digital finance. My name is Pieter Paul van Oerle. I'm the domain lead for digital finance. I've been working with the teams here behind the scenes over the last weeks to get this show organized for the domain of digital finance. And we are doing this kickoff webinar with three experts from the field that have joined me here. I have Alexander Stevens from the European Union, Søren Gigler, also from the European Union, the digital domain, and Linas from Ernst & Young. I see some people on the public chat, so I think you guys are here as well. And I'm going to keep it really short. So I am super excited to be part of this initiative about EU versus virus, really finding solutions to get us out of this corona crisis in a better shape than we maybe entered it. I think there's a huge potential that we will not go back to the old normal, but that we will enter a new normal where there's loads of opportunities to really make this a better world. And we are going to find solutions that bring us to that better world, I'm sure, over the next 48 hours that are coming up. And I am also sure that that people that are now tuning in will be part of those solutions. So thank you for being here. It's all about you, basically. It's not about us. But we will share some of our thoughts of why this is an important initiative and why we are so happy that these teams are all participating in EU versus virus. So, Alexander, I wanted to start with you. Maybe you can do a really short introduction about yourself and also share why you think this is so important and how you have been involved from the start of this initiative.
Thank you, Pieter. I'm Alex Stevens. I work in DG FISMA in the European Commission, which is the equivalent of the Ministry of Finance, and I'm part of the digital finance unit. What we do basically is we try to promote policies that are going to promote new innovation in the financial sector. We're now actually in the midst of our public consultation. So I'm doing some promotion for it right now. Basically, we're planning a new strategy for the European Union for the next 5 years. And we're asking fintech stakeholders to come with replies on how we should shape that strategy, which will come out in Q3 this year. And the crisis occurred. And we were involved in putting in place all the recovery packages and so on. And our unit, we're curious to know, okay, what role does digital finance play in the current crisis? So definitely digital finance and any digital framework is a big saver in this current situation. It allows business continuity, and there's many new solutions that are now actually even coming out based on the current context. Branches are closed. So how do you do banking? You go on your smartphone. That's the only way to do it. But of course, there's a big part of the population that doesn't have a smartphone, doesn't have connectivity. So how do we make sure that those digitally excluded are also taken into account? Another question is, when these recovery packages are put in place, how do we make sure that we target them towards the right sectors, the companies, the self-employed, anyone in trouble right now? So we were thinking, okay, why not use some data analytics? Why not create some tools that enable you to identify these entities in trouble and help them apply fast and also distribute the funds faster? We've seen many solutions in the UK, Switzerland, China. Now it's the moment to have them in the European Union, but also through this hackathon to make them replicable anywhere else in the world. So we joined this hackathon. We think it's an amazing initiative. I see there's more than 600 that signed up to this domain. And together, both the public and private sector, we can work together this week and put them in place. But this is just the beginning. There's going to be a follow-up. The European Innovation Council is involved. And hopefully these solutions will be pragmatic solutions that are going to be used in the real world. And I want us to also think about the legacy of what we're doing. We're not only trying to solve this crisis, but any of these tools can then be used in the future in future crises as well. So it's not about bringing digitalization in the current context, but also think about the future.
Great, thanks for those opening words. That's really inspiring. Really good to hear. Yeah, and we should indeed not forget over 600 people directly into the digital finance domain. In total, nearly 20,000 people signed up so far, right? And the registrations are still open. So the total impact is going to be enormous. That's for sure. Maybe Alexander, to now move to Linas. You work with EY. EY is one of the big partners of this initiative. And we got in contact, and you also wanted to share some of your perspective of both working in the financial sector and with the fintech, but as well as working with governments and European governments. So Linas, the floor is to you for some opening words.
Thank you, Pieter Paul. Hi, everyone. I'm Linas Dicpetris. I'm with EY in Vilnius, Lithuania tonight. So I actually do indeed work a lot with the governments, both in my native country here, but also across a bigger region where I'm responsible for helping my colleagues with serving their governments in 30 plus countries here. And I think what I see, and the reason I'm here today is I see that, governments are struggling and they need help. We say citizens need to get together. I think even governments need to get together to resolve this. So everyone needs to get together. So, what I see, what my colleagues see when we work with the governments is that there is a huge challenge ahead of us. When we talk about finance, we have now the issue of not just, agreeing to something big. I think many governments now have actually agreed to big tasks, big stimulus packages. But, the next step, what happens then? Actually, we already see that in a number of countries, the money does not easily flow down to those that need it, to the beneficiaries, be it private individuals or businesses, big or small. And when we look at it, the everyday systems that we have in our countries, even if they have distribution systems, financial channels, they're just not accommodated to deal with this. You cannot send so much stuff through the system so quickly to so many people and incur those risks that in normal life can sink organizations. So when you look at this, you realize that this cannot be addressed in normal simple ways. You need you need hackathons like this one and efforts of many people working together on these issues. Otherwise, we are going to see a huge fall down and economic disaster, which we don't want any of us. So I think trying to help this together, to solve this together, is why we are all here, I guess.
Right. Thanks for that. Søren, over to you, I think, directly. You also have been involved from the start setting up this EU versus virus hackathon. What's been your involvement so far, and how do you look at what we have here with 20,000 participants and this buzzing energy of all these creative minds that are willing to contribute?
Well, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. So we are really excited to have you, and it's real innovation, I think. So I work in the digital innovation and blockchain unit, and this is completely different than we usually operate. So, and I have been involved also at the Global Hack, and this is also follow-up. We strongly support this. And why do we support this? So I actually have written something called Hackathon for Whom and Hackathon for What. I think it's really important to think about why is it that we engage in this. And one issue is the crisis triggered us to come together between the European Commission, private sector, civil society. And just think about it. I mean, volunteers, right? People dedicating their weekend. I mean, the first hackathon, be honest, I was up until 3 in the morning, mentoring teams from around the world and it creates it's a bond. So we are here to empower you. You have the solutions, and then also to have an engagement with you and listen to your needs and how you find out. So we basically have sponsored concrete challenges. Yeah, maybe I can mention one, which is called EU for You. So the EU for You challenge, what is it all about? Basically empowering citizens to have easy access to EU-funded programs. So the vision is you could go on a Google map and look up in your local town, say, I don't know, you are in Lithuania, yeah, or in Estonia, in Tallinn. Imagine you're in Tallinn and you want to know what is the EU financing in Tallinn. So that's basically the challenge. And
really cool.
Yeah, so that's one of the challenges. And second, we work a lot on blockchain. And that's related why I'm here with digital finance. And blockchain, I think, is highly disruptive and super needed. We just had this discussion this morning about during the crisis, tracing of apps, data protection issues. How can we use privacy? I mean, it's super important, but blockchain does provide us a very new, powerful tool also for, of course, digital finance. And what Alexander said, reaching the excluded. I think it's very important that we consider from day one that our tools, whatever we develop, is not only for younger people, but also really is somehow able to reach elderly and others that are not into fintech, if I may say so. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot. Alex, so you've been involved with the digital finance domain more than anything, right? And stepping up also, like, what do we need to solve? What are the topics that we need to address? Do you want to talk a bit about the key challenges that have been defined and why we chose these ones, right? Because we could have chosen 100 ones, but we must have, how did we narrow down to these topics? And what are we looking for?
So there are 6 categories plus an open category, because this is, of course, a brainstorming and we all need to get together and there's many more solutions that can come out. But the first 3 challenges really come together. So the first one is using data analytics to find out, okay, who's in trouble right now. So any fintech platforms already today, for example, Amazon will look at how much a company is selling on their e-commerce, and then will determine what's their credit risk based on how much they're selling. Well, we can do the same here. We can find out a companies based on their receivables, what impact has the crisis had on their revenue. Second, self-employed people. In the UK, you have an initiative called Public Credit. Basically, they used open banking and made a platform where the self-employed have their accounts screened by the system, and it will determine, okay, how much revenue did they used to make before, and then does it mean that now, because there's an impact with the crisis, can they get some stimulus, some aid from the public, from the authorities? So there's many examples of how this could be implemented, how data can be used to detect, identify entities in trouble. Then the second is, how do you apply? And so we've seen in Switzerland, for example, there's a digital platform where you apply, and then in 24 hours, you get your answer and the funds, which then leads to the third challenge, is how do you distribute this funds? So there's digital money, digital transfers. How can all of this be improved to speed up the whole process? So these 3 challenges go pretty much together. And so if there's various teams working on these 3 different challenges, maybe we won't have time this weekend, but as a follow-up, we can bring that together into one concrete solution. Then the insurtech. So we've seen many insurtech platforms actually providing emergency coverage to medical staff, to gig workers, delivery workers right now, specifically related to the coronavirus crisis. So how can we make sure that we make medical coverage universal and adapted to the current situation? Moving on to the next topic, crowdfunding. That's also very important. So we've seen many crowdfunding platforms waiving their fees for COVID-19 campaigns. Basically, you can raise funds for your local hospital, buy some medical equipment for the nursing homes, etc. So that's great. It's done on a local basis. How can we make sure that public funds also come in together with these private funds? One potential idea would be to create an API that would connect all crowdfunding platforms in Europe, and then we would be able to create one single large pan-European campaign. And every member states and also from outside the EU could then chip into this fund. So that's an API that could be used now, but also in the future for any other type of crisis. And then the big topic, digital inclusion. How do we make sure that everyone has access to digital finance tools and can survive through this crisis? In the US, you're aware that the government is distributing checks to every citizen, but now every citizen has a bank account. So there's a fintech US Venmo that allows you to open an account without having to open a banking account. There's many other solutions that came out elsewhere in the UK, in Singapore, and so on. So what can be done further in this field? And then the last category, other, is open to all type of ideas. One idea also that is interesting is biometric payments. So avoid any contact. We know that, for example, for contactless payments, they've increased the threshold. So now it's about 50 euros, not 25 as before. But then in the future, how about face recognition or any other tool that allows you to not even touch anything and make the payment? So these solutions exist in the ecosystem, but how can we implement it to today's context, and how can we accelerate the development of these solutions? So it's really, you see that drugs now are being trialed in an accelerated pace. How about putting in place digital finance tools that, who knows?
Oh, I think Alex is breaking up. Do we still hear him? No, we don't. No. Probably
frozen
in the connection there. But while we are there, I think we got most of the points about the challenges that are out there and the additional challenges. Linas, when we talked before this webinar, we also talked about, like, how do we distribute the funds, right, from the countries to all the initiatives that need money urgently. And so those first three challenges that Alex just talked about, those must be close to your heart, right? Do you want to reflect on that?
Sure. Thanks for that. I think indeed, if you look at the magnitude of the challenges, that you can direct the funding to either the companies or the physical persons, the citizen, through through not too many channels. Governments do this through fiscal policy. Banks do this through through their systems that they have. And as I mentioned in the beginning, both of those have challenges. And what challenges they have is obviously when you look at the, for instance, providing the benefits to the personal, personal customers. It is actually a scalability issue, because the systems normally are not really, designed to deal with so much load at the same time, and the usual, taxation offices ways, or social security offices ways here are basically overloaded. So I think that's an issue. And when you look maybe at the universal basic salary side of it, so just give some money to people, that probably is somewhat easier, because social benefits is a wide-scale system in most of the countries. But then grants, direct payments, if they are actually related to some kind of a criteria, then you get immediately challenges with same scalability, but also flexibility, consistency of the system, consistency of the same grant provisions, and then you might even have challenges between national authorities and then the regional and local authorities dealing in the same way, or at least in similar way, with this challenge. And especially when we come to the grants to the SMEs, for instance, then of course screening them, understanding which ones need it more than the others. It's a challenge, and manual work here and manual kind of physical decision making is something that takes a lot of time. And many governments already now say that they are working around the clock, and their people are really giving all they can, but they just physically cannot do it. And then therefore you need to think about how to help them with automated systems and solutions. Yeah. If you actually then look also at the banking side of it, here you also have some issues, because governments sometimes they would say in their stimulus packages they will guarantee 80% or even more than that of the new loans, but then there's still the 20% that the banks take a risk on, and then they take time to process that risk. And then again, we have a number of countries now where we see that banks are not really that fast in delivering the benefits, the cash, the money, because they need to go through the jars. They have their procedures and processes. So the question is, again, how do you help them with that, and what's the solution there specifically? But even apart from those, you have communication challenges about being able to transmit all of that information clearly to customers and the clients, even at the same time as there are probably some eligibility criteria that you need to deal with. So you need to balance these together. You obviously have the kind of remote workforce challenge, which if the bankers were all at work, but they are not, they're at home. Same with the government employees, most of them are at home, right? So how do you maintain that with this? What's the kind of service availability in these conditions, and how do you kind of get around that? And then obviously the operating model challenges already are apparent because of us being unused to. Yes.
Yeah, let me pause you there for a minute, because we can go on about the challenges that are huge, but we also have to be mindful of time. We have just sort of 5 minutes left, and I wanted to ask an urgent question to Søren before we go to a wrap up and some final thoughts maybe. So I'll come back to you. But Søren, when we talked before this webinar, we also talked about this is not the end, right? We now have 48 hours of hacking that's coming up. All the challenges that Alex and Linas basically introduced are super important, but we want to make sure that they continue after the hackathon. What's being provisioned for that? How do you look at the days after?
Yes, thank you. So we are planning a concrete, we call this matchathon. So what does that mean? So we from Startup Europe program work closely with all service commissions to link the best ideas with investors, specifically angel investors, family offices. And we already had conversations with them, and they were interested in doing so, because, and then second, we actually will provide the funding through our Startup Europe program for acceleration. So we have accelerator programs in place, and they are receiving funding from us. And we will then connect the best solutions with those accelerator programs. And the last thing I wanted to say, where we are very concerned, is the regional inequalities. So basically now this crisis, we're very afraid that it will lead even to more fragmentation also in Europe. And that's why we have specific programs in place. And one for Central Eastern Europe, it's called DISC, Digital Innovation and Scale-Up Program, which is specifically fostering innovation and finance in the poorest regions of Europe. And that's why the solidarity now through this hackathon is a real message to Europe and the world that we can only come over this crisis together and not leave anyone and no region behind.
That's very beautiful, Søren, and I have noticed that, right? Because both when we look at the number of volunteers behind the scenes that has been involved in preparing this hackathon in all the different domains, all the mentors that have volunteers, I must say a majority is from Eastern Europe, from Turkey. There's a huge group from Turkey, also from outside Europe that want to help in this hackathon, and from Southern Europe. And when we look at the biggest countries contributing participants, we see Italy, Spain, France really leading the numbers game there. So I think that's really promising. Those countries have been hit hard, are in distress, and there's many other things they could be focusing on in the weekends, but still they choose to participate and help the whole of Europe move forward.
And I wanted to thank all the participants before we forget it. Thank you so much for dedicating your time and actually helping us. And as I think, which came out here very clearly, alone, we, the Commission, the government, the private sector, we cannot do it. We actually have to come together, all stakeholders, to find common solutions. And that's why this technology is empowering us to do so.
Great, thank you, Søren. Alex, you had a bit of a glitch there with your technology. Great to have you back. We have time for a 1 minute final thoughts from you, and then we'll close with Linas, and we are at the end of the session.
Well, again, thank you all for participating. It's amazing. We didn't expect this. We basically came out with this idea on digital finance a bit more of a week ago, and the result is amazing. The executive vice president Dombrovskis is aware that you're working on this. He's looking forward to the solutions that are gonna come out of this, and we will make sure that after this weekend we keep working on it. There's a follow-up, and that these solutions really come out in the real world and help out not only in the EU but also across the world. So thank you very much, and please feel free to contact us. We're more than happy to assist. We've put in place a great team of coordinators, mentors, and we're all together in this weekend. So good luck. It's going to be intense, but there's going to be a great result. Amaze us. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Linas, closing thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. I actually would like to do the same. Thank dearly, everyone for participating. I actually did get a message already from Alvin from Flamingo money transfer team that have already started hacking. And I think, these are the people that we are here for. Just on this, there was actually a question in the poll, and I don't know whether you looked at the Q&A, but there was a question about this, so maybe we can also address them later. But write to us, contact us. We'll be there for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we are heading to. We are at the top of 30 minutes. It's all been programmed very condensed. To make sure that you have the time to work on your solutions, not be listening to us talking about it, but you doing it. That's going to be most important. This entire team is available over the weekends in the domain. You can find us, you can ping us directly, And there's another, there are hundreds of experts that are ready to help with your solution. So ask the right questions, get support, and make sure you get the most out of this. Don't just do this to win an award, but do this to make impact and to really make a breakthrough with your tech solutions. It's possible. There's hundreds of companies and private organizations, universities, they're all lined up here behind the European Union to make this work. So make best use of that network over the weekend, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, guys. Thanks for opening.
Good luck.
Thank you all.
Thanks.